In the quiet college town of Santa Cruz, California, during the early 1970s, young women began vanishing without a trace. The police were baffled. There were almost no bodies, no crime scenes, and no obvious suspects. What they didn't know was that the killer was hiding in plain sight. A 6'9", 300-pound Edmund Emil Kemper III, a gentle-sounding giant who frequented the same bars as the detectives hunting him. With an IQ of 145, Kemper wasn't just strong, he was terrifyingly smart. He'd already murdered his grandparents at age 15, served time in a psychiatric custody, convinced doctors he was cured, and walked free at 21. Now he was ready to settle a lifelong score with the women who rejected him, and especially with the one woman he hated most, his own mother. Kemper's method was chillingly methodical. He would cruise the UC Santa Cruz campus in his beige Ford Galaxy, offering rides to hitchhiking co-eds. His size usually scared girls away, but when they saw his university parking sticker, they felt safe. Once inside, he'd lock the doors, drive to a secluded spot, and use a .22 pistol or knife with surgical precision. After killing them, he'd take the bodies back to his mother's apartment while she was at work, dismember them in the bathtub, and keep heads or other parts as trophies. He even engaged in necrophilia and cannibalism, later saying he wanted to possess them completely. All of this happened just feet from where his domineering mother slept. What made Kemper uniquely terrifying was how he toyed with investigators. He became friends with cops at a bar called the Jury Room, earning the nickname Big Eddie. They confided in him about the case, never realizing he was the co-ed killer they were hunting. Kemper's intelligence allowed him to stay 3 steps ahead. He removed bullets from bodies so ballistics couldn't trace them, scattered remains across multiple counties, and kept his car spotless. But the rage inside him kept growing. On Easter weekend, 1973, he finally snapped and murdered his mother with a claw hammer, then used her severed head in a final act of grotesque humiliation before fleeing. After killing his mother's best friend as a parting gift, Kemper drove across the country, expecting headlines screaming his name. When the news stayed silent, his ego couldn't take it. He pulled over in Colorado, called Santa Cruz police, and confessed everything in calm detail. Officers who knew him personally refused to believe it at first, until he guided them to every dump site. When asked why he turned himself in, Kemper replied, "The original purpose was gone. It wasn't serving any physical or real or emotional purpose. It was just a pure waste of time. Emotionally, it had served its purpose. He finally felt he'd won against his mother." Edmund Kemper was sentenced to life without parole. From prison, he's given some of the most articulate and self-aware interviews in criminal history, narrating his own crimes on audio tapes that still chill listeners today. standing 6 feet 9 inches tall, with an IQ higher than most college professors, he once said, "I'm an American, and I killed Americans. I'm a human being." Yet, he also admitted he could have kept killing forever if he hadn't stopped himself. Santa Cruz, in the early 1970s, had 3 active serial killers at once: Kemper, Herbert Mullen, and John Linley Frazier. But Kemper's towering intellect and polite demeanor made him the most frightening of them all, because he showed how easily pure evil can wear the mask of normalcy. He was handsome, charismatic, a law student with political ambitions for the governor's mansion. Women trusted Ted Bundy instantly. Between 1974 and 1978, that trust became the deadliest mistake of their lives. With an IQ estimated around 139, Bundy didn't just kill, he orchestrated elaborate deceptions that fooled police, judges, and even his own girlfriend for years. He'd wear a fake cast or sling, limp up to young women with long, dark hair parted in the middle, and ask for help loading something into his tan Volkswagen Beetle. The moment they leaned in, he'd strike with a crowbar, stuff them into the car after removing the passenger seat, and drive away. What followed was hours or days of unimaginable horror. Bundy's signature was necrophilia. He kept bodies for days, grooming them, applying makeup, and returning to remote dump sites again and again until they were skeletonized. In Washington state, he used Taylor Mountain as his private graveyard. In Utah, Colorado, and finally Florida, the pattern continued. He decapitated at least 12 victims and kept heads in his apartment as trophies. His intelligence showed in how he varied his methods, sometimes strangling, sometimes bludgeoning, sometimes luring 2 victims at once. In 1975, he was arrested for kidnapping in Utah, but police had no idea they had a serial killer. Bundy represented himself at trial, charming reporters and spectators alike. Twice he escaped custody, once by jumping from a courthouse window, once by sawing through his jail ceiling and losing 30 pounds to crawl through vents. During his second escape in late 1977, he fled to Tallahassee, Florida, and committed his most savage attack. In the middle of the night, he entered the Chi Omega sorority house at Florida State University, bludgeoning and strangling 4 women in 15 minutes. Also biting one victim so deeply he left perfect dental impressions. A month later, he abducted 12-year-old Kimberly Leach, the youngest and final victim. This time, police had his blood type, his bite marks, and eyewitnesses who saw the polite man in the VW. At his televised 1979 trial, the first ever broadcast nationally, Bundy again acted as his own attorney, turning the courtroom into theater. He cross-examined witnesses, flirted with spectators, and proposed to his girlfriend on the stand. But forensic odontology sealed his fate. The bite marks on Lisa Levy matched his teeth perfectly. Sentenced to death, Bundy spent years confessing and retracting, trying to trade more details for stays of execution. In his final interview with Dr. James Dobson, hours before execution, he blamed pornography for his crimes, a claim many experts dismiss as manipulation. On January 24, 1989, Ted Bundy was executed in Florida's electric chair, Old Sparky. Crowds outside cheered as smoke rose. Ted Bundy is often called the prototype of the organized, intelligent serial killer. He confessed to 30 murders across 7 states, but the true number is believed higher. His charm and intellect let him operate for years, while police in different jurisdictions failed to connect the dots. Even today, his recorded confessions and courtroom performances are studied in criminology classes. Bundy proved that evil doesn't always look monstrous. It can smile, shake your hand, and ask for help carrying groceries. As one survivor who escaped his car said, he seemed like the perfect young Republican. That illusion of normalcy, built on cold calculation and sky-high IQ, is exactly what made Ted Bundy one of the most dangerous predators in American history. Milwaukee, summer of 1991. A dazed young man in handcuffs stumbles into the street, telling police that a weird dude tried to restrain him. Officers Tracy Edwards led them back to apartment 213. When they opened Jeffrey Dahmer's bedroom drawer and found Polaroids of dismembered bodies, the quiet 31-year-old chocolate factory worker's double life collapsed. Over the previous 13 years, Dahmer, possessing an IQ of 144, had lured 17 young men and boys to his apartment with promises of money for photos or just a beer. Once inside, he drugged them, strangled them, and began a horrifying process of experimentation aimed at creating submissive zombies or keeping perfect lovers forever. What made Dahmer so hard to catch was his meticulous planning and calm demeanor. He chose marginalized victims, mostly gay men of color, who police often ignored when reported missing. He moved apartments several times, transporting body parts in suitcases without raising suspicion. Even when police returned 14-year-old Konarak Synthesum phone to him in 1991, after Dahmer convinced them the drugged, bleeding boy was his drunk boyfriend, no one searched the apartment. Konarak became victim number 13. Dahmer's high intelligence showed in how he compartmentalized his life. By day, a quiet factory worker. By night, a necrophile and cannibal who photographed every stage of decomposition for his private album. After his arrest, Dahmer gave a 200-page confession with eerie detachment, describing each murder in chronological order, as if reading a grocery list. Psychiatrists diagnosed him with necrophilia, borderline personality, and schizotypal disorder, but found him legally sane. He knew right from wrong. He just didn't care. At trial in 1992, he pleaded guilty but insane. The jury rejected it, and gave him 15 consecutive life terms. In prison, he initially stayed in solitary for safety, but later requested to join general population. On November 28, 1994, fellow inmate Christopher Scarver beat Dahmer to death with a metal bar from the gym, crushing his skull. The same fate Dahmer had inflicted on so many others. Jeffrey Dahmer's case shocked America, not because of the body count, but because of how ordinary he appeared. Baby-faced, the spectacled, softly spoken, he looked like the boy next door. His IQ of 144 allowed him to carry out grotesque experiments that most minds couldn't even imagine. When asked why, he gave a chillingly simple answer. I wanted to keep them with me. The Milwaukee Cannibal showed that extreme loneliness and a brilliant but broken mind can produce horrors more disturbing than any slasher film. Even decades later, the Polaroids police found in that drawer remain too graphic to publish. A permanent reminder that sometimes the most terrifying monsters don't hide in shadows. They invite you in for a drink. Sacramento, 1978. A beautiful, blonde former violin prodigy from a wealthy family walks into a quiet shopping mall, holding hands with her husband Gerald, a violent ex-con with a taste for teenage virgins. Charlene Gallego had an IQ of 160, higher than Einstein, but she used every point of it to help her husband live out his darkest fantasy, kidnapping young girls to keep as disposable sex slaves. While Gerald was the muscle, Charlene was the brain. She chose the victims, lured them with smiles and promises of marijuana or jobs, and calmly watched while they were raped for days or weeks in a soundproofed van before being murdered. 10 confirmed victims, all between 13 and 21 years old. Charlene's childhood looked perfect. Private schools, classical music, but she was filled with sexual abuse and drug addiction. When she met Gerald in 1977, she found someone who let her feel powerful for the first time. She wrote in her diary, "I've finally found someone who will do anything I ask." Their method was ice cold. Charlene would approach couples or lone girls in parking lots, flash a gun hidden in her purse, and order them into their van. Once inside, the victims were handcuffed, driven to remote areas, and turned into love slaves. Charlene participated in the assaults and later said she enjoyed the feeling of total control. After the couple grew bored, Gerald would shoot or bludgeon the girls while Charlene kept lookout. What made the Gallegos almost impossible to catch for 2 years was Charlene's genius-level planning. She kept detailed notebooks of potential victims, changed cars frequently, and dumped bodies hundreds of miles apart across California, Nevada, and Oregon. She even used her charm to talk her way out of a traffic stop, while a kidnapped 17-year-old girl lay bound and gagged in the back. In 1980, they made their only mistake. They abducted a young couple from a Sacramento fair and let a witness see their license plate. When police raided their home, they found the infamous soundproofed van, handcuffs, and Charlene's handwritten slave list. In exchange for testifying against Gerald and avoiding the death penalty, Charlene gave a chilling 10-hour confession describing every murder in emotionless detail. She claimed she only did it to keep Gerald's love. But detectives noticed she smiled while recounting the rapes. Gerald was sentenced to death, later died in prison of cancer, while Charlene received 16 years and 8 months. Paroled in 1997, she changed her name and disappeared. To this day, nobody knows where the woman with the 160 IQ who orchestrated one of America's most sadistic couples is living. Some say she's a grandmother in Europe. Others claim she's back in California, still perfectly capable of manipulating anyone she meets. Charlene Gallego remains the highest IQ female serial killer ever documented. Unlike most women who kill with a partner, she was not a submissive follower. She was the strategist, the lure, and often the one who decided when a girl had to die. Criminologists call the couple a perfect storm of male sexual sadism and brilliant organization. Charlene once told a psychiatrist, "I never felt more alive than when I held a gun to a girl's head and she begged." Her case proved that extreme intelligence in the wrong hands can be just as deadly in a woman as in a man, and that sometimes the most dangerous monster wears lipstick and a sweet smile. Between 1971 and 1980, bars across Texas, Nevada, and California became hunting grounds for a quiet, baby-faced drunk named Carol Cole. With an IQ of 152, he was smart enough to kill at least 16 women. He claimed 35 and almost never leave evidence. Cole hated women who reminded him of his abusive, cheating mother, who used to force him to watch her have sex with men while his father was away at war. His revenge fantasy was simple: pick up alcoholic women in dive bars, go home with them, and when they passed out, he'd strangle them with his bare hands. Then he'd sleep next to the corpse for hours, feeling peaceful for the first time. Cole's first murder was at 8 years old. He drowned a classmate for mocking him. Sent to psychiatric institutions as a teen, doctors noted his genius IQ, but released him as no longer dangerous. Big mistake. As an adult, he moved town to town, marrying and abandoning alcoholic women, sometimes killing them when they cheated. His method was terrifyingly efficient. No weapons, no blood, no noise, just hands around the throat while the victim was unconscious. He'd leave bodies in their own apartments, sometimes staying days to drink their liquor and watch TV. Police almost always ruled the deaths accidental alcohol-related, exactly what Cole counted on. In 1980, after strangling a woman in Dallas, Cole did something unusual. He confessed to his new wife. She didn't believe him until he led police to an alley where he dumped a body only days earlier. Once in custody, Cole calmly recited murder after murder, drawing maps to graves in Nevada deserts that investigators never knew existed. He told detectives, "I only killed the ones who needed killing. The sluts, the cheaters." His IQ allowed him to remember every victim's name, address, and exact date of death, going back a decade. When asked why he finally stopped, he answered, "I was tired of running, and honestly, I ran out of bars." Cole pleaded guilty to 5 murders to avoid trial and demanded the death penalty, saying he didn't deserve to live. On December 6, 1985, he became the first man executed in Nevada in almost 25 years. His last meal: jumbo shrimp, French fries, and salad. Minutes before lethal injection, he told the warden, "It's been a good life. I've enjoyed most of it." The quiet genius who strangled women while they slept died without remorse, proving that sometimes the deadliest predators aren't loud or flashy. They're the polite guy at the end of the bar who buys you one last drink before everything goes black. Carol Cole's case is a textbook example of how high intelligence combined with childhood trauma can create a perfect killing machine. He never used guns, never left fingerprints, and chose victims society barely noticed. Criminologists believe his real body count is closer to 30 to 35, making him one of America's most prolific unknown serial killers. His calm, articulate confessions, delivered with an IQ higher than most of his interrogators, still haunt detectives who worked the case. Cole once said, "Killing those women was the only time I felt in control of my life." A tragic, terrifying reminder that genius without empathy can quietly strangle an entire country, one barstool at a time. In the summer of 1997, a charming, multilingual, 27-year-old party boy named Andrew Cunanan went on a cross-country killing spree that ended with the murder of fashion icon Gianni Versace on the steps of his Miami mansion. With an IQ of 147, Cunanan spoke 5 languages, could quote classic literature, and fooled high society into believing he was a wealthy heir. In reality, he was a narcissistic male prostitute, spiraling into rage after being dumped by wealthy lovers as he aged. In just 3 months, he killed 5 men, including 2 millionaires, a famous architect, and finally Versace, using guns, knives, hammers, and even a bulldozer, all while taunting the FBI on America's first nationwide manhunt, televised 24/7. Cunanan's spree began in Minneapolis when he tortured and murdered his friend, Jeffrey Trail, with a hammer. Then shot fashion designer Lee Miglin in Chicago, stuffing him into his own garage and crushing his ribs with a cement-covered car. Days later, he killed a cemetery caretaker in New Jersey just to steal his red pickup truck. His intelligence showed in how he stayed one step ahead, using victims' cell phones to monitor news coverage changing appearance with ease and leaving deliberate red herrings like fake passports. The media called him the most dangerous man in America, and his face was on every post office wall and TV screen. On July 15, 1997, Cunanan walked up to Gianni Versace, returning from his morning newspaper walk, and shot him twice in the head with the same .40 caliber pistol used in his first 2 murders. The murder was caught on surveillance and shocked the world. 8 days later, trapped on a luxurious Miami houseboat, surrounded by SWAT teams, Cunanan shot himself with the same gun rather than be captured. Inside the houseboat, police found gay pornography, a pawn ticket for one of the stolen items, and chillingly, a neatly folded Versace shirt he apparently planned to wear. No suicide note, no manifesto, just silence. Autopsy revealed Cunanan was HIV negative, contrary to rumors that AIDS rage fueled the spree. Psychologists now believe it was pure narcissistic injury. He couldn't accept becoming ordinary as his looks faded. His genius-level IQ let him manipulate victims and police alike. He once checked into 5-star hotels under murdered men's names and ate at expensive restaurants, while the biggest manhunt in U.S. history chased shadows. The FBI later admitted they underestimated him because he didn't fit the usual disorganized spree killer profile. He was organized, theatrical, and terrifyingly smart. Andrew Cunanan remains the only serial killer to assassinate a global celebrity in broad daylight and trigger an international media frenzy. His 90-day rampage proved that extreme intelligence plus pathological narcissism can be more explosive than any bomb. He didn't just want to kill, he wanted the world to watch. And for one blazing summer in 1997, the entire planet did. As one detective said, he played us all like a violin, and when the music stopped, he took the deepest bow possible, right in front of Versace's mansion. A deadly reminder that sometimes the brightest minds burn hottest and leave the darkest ashes. Dahmer's childhood fascination with dead animals evolved into an adult obsession with total control. He drilled holes into living victims' skulls and injected hydrochloric acid or boiling water, trying to lobotomize them into mindless companions. When that failed, he dismembered bodies with surgical precision, dissolved flesh in acid barrels, bleached bones, and kept skulls as souvenirs. He ate parts of at least some victims, claiming it made them feel they were part of me forever. His apartment contained a 57-gallon drum of acid, a refrigerator with human heads, and a freezer stocked with hearts and biceps. Yet neighbors only ever complained about bad smells and strange noises. Dahmer always had a polite excuse. At the Veterans Affairs Medical Center in Northampton, Massachusetts, nurses started calling the evening shift the death shift. Between 1995 and 1996, the number of patient deaths tripled, and almost all happened when one particular nurse was on duty. Kristen Gilbert, blonde, friendly, and with an IQ of 142, was secretly injecting veterans with massive doses of epinephrine, sending them into fatal cardiac arrest just so she could be the hero rushing in with the crash cart. Colleagues noticed she got an adrenaline rush during emergencies and even flirted with a security guard while patients coded. She killed at least 4, confirmed, suspected in 40 to 80 more. Kristen grew up a straight-A student and married young, but craved constant excitement. Nursing gave her godlike power over life and death. She would inject epinephrine into IV bags when no one was looking, then page a code blue and run dramatically into the room. Co-workers later said she seemed sexually aroused during resuscitations. When her marriage fell apart and she began an affair with a hospital security officer, she started triggering emergencies so she could meet him at work and appear heroic. Patients, mostly elderly war veterans, became disposable props in her personal drama. The house of cards collapsed when 3 nurses risked their jobs to report her. Investigators discovered epinephrine vials hidden in her locker and phone records showing she paged her boyfriend seconds after injecting patients. In a panic, Kristen made a bomb threat against the hospital, an act that finally gave police probable cause to arrest her. During interrogation, she showed zero emotion, even joking with detectives. Prosecutors proved 4 murders using medical charts and witness testimony that she was the only person present at every single suspicious death over a 2-year period. At trial in 2001, Kristen smiled for cameras and blew kisses to her family. The jury took only 5 hours to convict her on 3 counts of first-degree murder and 1 attempted murder. She received 4 consecutive life sentences with no parole. While awaiting trial, she tried to have her ex-husband killed by hiring a hitman from prison. Further proof her need for drama never stopped. Fellow inmates nicknamed her Killer Kristen, and she spent years in solitary after threatening other prisoners. Today, she's incarcerated in a federal prison in Texas, still described by guards as charming, manipulative, and terrifyingly intelligent. Kristen Gilbert is one of the few female serial killers who murdered purely for thrills rather than profit or revenge. Her 142 IQ let her understand exactly how much epinephrine would kill without leaving obvious traces, and her nursing knowledge made her nearly untouchable for years. The VA hospital scandal led to nationwide reforms in drug security and patient monitoring. Gilbert once told a psychologist, "I loved the rush of bringing them back. And sometimes I just didn't. The angel of death who wore pastel scrubs, proved that the most dangerous predator in a hospital isn't a disease. It can be the person smiling at your bedside with a syringe hidden behind her back in the middle of one of America's bloodiest killing sprees. A charming photographer with an IQ over 160 appeared on national television and won a date. It was 1978, and the dating game introduced Bachelor Number 1 as a successful photographer who enjoys skydiving and motorcycling. The Bachelorette picked him. What ABC's audience didn't know, Rodney Alcala had already murdered at least 5 victims, including an 8-year-old girl, and would go on to kill more after the cameras stopped rolling. Behind the smile and witty answers was a predator who strangled women, waited for them to regain consciousness, then strangled them again, just to watch the life leave their eyes. Twice, Alcala's method was pure sadism mixed with genius. He'd pose as a fashion photographer, lure women and teenage girls with promises of professional portfolios, then rape, torture, and strangle them with his bare hands or a nylon cord. He took hundreds of explicit photos of his victims, some still alive, some already dead, and kept them as trophies. In 1979, he was finally arrested after murdering 12-year-old Robin Samso. Police searched his storage locker and found thousands of photographs of unidentified young women and boys, plus earrings that belonged to at least 2 dead victims. Many of those faces in those photos have never been identified. What made Alcala almost untouchable for a decade was his extraordinary intelligence. He earned a UCLA fine arts degree while on the FBI's 10 most wanted list, counseled at a children's arts camp under a false name, and even worked as a typesetter for the Los Angeles Times. During his first trial in 1980, he acted as his own attorney, questioning himself on the stand in a fake voice for hours. Convicted, sentenced to death, overturned, convicted again, overturned again. 3 trials over 30 years. Each time, he toyed with prosecutors, quoting Shakespeare and smirking at victims' families. In 2010, using new DNA technology, investigators finally linked him to murders in New York, Wyoming, and additional California victims. Alcala suddenly pleaded guilty to 5 more killings just to avoid another trial. Total confirmed victims, 8. Estimated real count, 50 to 130. On death row, he continued to play games, filing hundreds of frivolous appeals and drawing grotesque cartoons of his crimes. On July 24, 2021, at age 77, Rodney Alcala died of natural causes in a California prison hospital, robbing families of the execution they waited half a lifetime for. Rodney Alcala is considered one of the smartest and most sadistic serial killers in U.S. history. His IQ, charisma, and photographic memory let him operate across state lines, while police in different jurisdictions failed to connect the dots. Hundreds of his portfolio photos were released to the public in hopes of identifying more victims. Many remain nameless to this day. The man who won a date on national TV once told a surviving victim as he strangled her, "Take a deep breath. It only hurts for a little while." That chilling sentence, delivered with a smile, perfectly sums up the monster who proved evil can be brilliant, handsome, and hiding behind a TV camera. He never left fingerprints. He never left DNA. He buried kill kits years in advance across the United States, flew thousands of miles to retrieve them, murdered, then flew home the same day. Israel Keyes, an Army veteran, carpenter, and loving father, was described by the FBI as the most meticulous serial killer of the 21st century. With an estimated IQ around 140, he admitted to at least 11 murders between 2001 and 2012, but hinted at many more. His rules were simple: no victim under 16, no one he knew, and never twice in the same state. He wanted zero connection to his crimes. Keyes's preparation was military grade. He buried buckets containing guns, silencers, rope, Drano, and zip ties near future crime scenes, sometimes waiting 5 years to use them. He robbed banks for cash, so there was no credit card trail. He chose victims completely at random. A Vermont couple walking at night, an Anchorage barista closing alone, an 18-year-old girl in Alaska he abducted from her espresso stand. After raping and strangling Samantha Koenig in 2012, he sewed her eyes open, took a ransom photo to fool her boyfriend, then dismembered her and dumped her body through a hole in a frozen lake. When Keyes was finally caught in Texas after using Samantha's debit card, investigators were stunned. He had no criminal record, no manifesto, no sexual trophies, just a list of rules and a skull drawn on his cell wall with his own blood. During 40 hours of interviews, he calmly drank Coca-Cola, described murders in chilling detail, and smiled while smoking cigarettes. He claimed kills in at least 10 states and hinted at victims in Canada and Mexico. The FBI still believes he murdered people they'll never find because he burned bodies with accelerants and scattered ashes in remote wilderness. In December 2012, while awaiting trial, Keyes slit his wrist and strangled himself with a bedsheet in his Anchorage jail cell. The only victim he ever failed to plan for. He left behind a 4-page suicide note written in blood that rambled about fame and darkness, but named no victims. The FBI released parts of his interviews in hopes the public could help identify more crime scenes. To this day, they still find occasional kill caches he buried years earlier. Keyes once told agents, "You guys don't understand. I enjoyed it. I liked killing people more than I liked anything else." Israel Keyes rewrote the rules of serial killer profiling. No pattern, no preferred victim type, no cooling off period. Just cold, patient calculation, powered by a brilliant mind. The FBI calls him a force of pure evil, operating with near-perfect operational security. Because he took his own life, and most of his secrets with him, dozens of families will never have closure. Keyes proved that in the modern age, a truly intelligent killer can disappear into the crowd, strike anywhere, and vanish without ever being caught, unless he wants to be. Somewhere out there, more of his buried buckets are still waiting. For 31 years, the city of Wichita, Kansas, lived in terror of a ghost who called himself BTK, bind, torture, kill. Between 1974 and 1991, he murdered 10 people, taunting police and newspapers with letters describing his crimes in sickening detail. No one suspected that the monster writing "Oh, Death to Nancy" poems was actually Dennis Rader, church council president, Cub Scout leader, compliance officer, devoted husband, and father of 2, with an estimated IQ well above 135. Rader turned murder into a decades-long game of cat and mouse, and he was always the cat. His first attack was the slaughter of the Otero family in 1974. Parents and 2 children strangled and suffocated, while the other kids were at school. Rader masturbated over the mother's body, while the 11-year-old watched. He kept mother loads of pantyhose, bras, and driver's licenses stolen from victims' homes. Between kills, he sent letters, detailed drawings of victims, jewelry taken from bodies, and poems titled, "Oh Anna, why didn't you appear?" He craved attention, but was smart enough to vanish for years at a time, letting Wichita believe BTK had died or moved away. In 2004, 30 years after the first murder, Rader's ego got the better of him. He started writing letters again, asking police if a floppy disk could be traced. A detective lied and said no. Rader believed him and sent one. Metadata on the disk showed the file was last saved at Christ Lutheran Church and authored by Dennis. When police Googled the church, they found its president, Dennis Rader. Surveillance confirmed his van matched grainy photos from 1974. On February 25, 2005, the compliance officer who wrote city parking tickets was arrested while driving home for lunch. In court, Rader gave a 30-minute monotone speech calmly describing each murder, how he cut phone lines, how long it took each victim to die, how he posed bodies for his Polaroid camera. He showed zero emotion, even when victims' relatives screamed at him. Sentenced to 10 consecutive life terms, Kansas had no death penalty at the time of his crimes. He now spends 23 hours a day in solitary at El Dorado Correctional Facility. He still draws perverted cartoons and writes letters requesting interviews, signing them the BTK creation. Dennis Rader is the ultimate proof that pure evil can wear a tie, lead Sunday services, and kiss his daughter goodnight while secretly fantasizing about strangling the neighbor. His intelligence let him hide for 3 decades in plain sight, raising a family and enforcing dog leash laws by day, drawing bondage fantasies of his victims by night. When asked why he did it, he answered with chilling simplicity. It was a sexual thing. The demon inside me. BTK showed the world that sometimes the most terrifying monster isn't hiding in the shadows. He's the polite man in the pew behind you, smiling while he plans who to bind, torture, and kill next.